All my life, I was overshadowed by my golden child sister. On my wedding day, I got my sweet revenge when she tried to steal the spotlight. She failed. Hey there. Welcome back to my YouTube channel where I bring to life some of the most compelling stories inspired by real-life situations shared on Reddit covering family drama, friendships, and all the complexities of life. Today's story is about a girl who spent her whole life overshadowed by her older sister, the family's golden child. Have you ever felt overlooked or unfairly treated by someone close to you? Stay tuned to see how our main character reclaimed her power and took control of her own destiny. If you find yourself relating to this story, or if you simply love a good revenge tale, make sure to watch till the end. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, it really motivates me to keep bringing you these captivating stories. I remember the first time I felt like I was invisible, like I was living in the shadow of someone else. Her name was Allison, my older sister. But she wasn't just any older sister, no, she was the golden child. She could do no wrong in the eyes of my parents. And if she did, it was always someone else's fault. Growing up, I was the one always in the background, the one who couldn't do anything right. I was invisible at best, and at worst, I was a punching bag. Allison was everything I wasn't. She was popular, charismatic, and everyone adored her. Me? I was just the quiet, unnoticed one, trying to navigate a world where I wasn't the star of the show. I remember the birthday parties where my cake always had her favorite flavor. The family vacations that she always got to choose. The presents that were just a little more special for her. Meanwhile, my achievements? They were barely acknowledged. And if I ever tried to speak up about it, if I even dared to point out that I was tired of being overlooked, I was labeled selfish or dramatic. Words that made me feel like my concerns didn't matter. Allison, on the other hand, was celebrated for the smallest things. My parents always praised her grades, her friends, her accomplishments. They never seemed to notice the cruelty she dished out to me. It wasn't always like this, at least not at first. But as we grew older, I began to realize the truth. Allison was more than just the favored child. She was the one who dictated the rules of our household. And those rules were simple: whatever she wanted, she got. If she didn't like my friends, I couldn't hang out with them. If she didn't like my boyfriend, suddenly, he was bad news, even if there was no proof. But the real turning point came when I realized how little power I had. My own life, my choices, my happiness. None of it mattered. I was living in a world where Allison's whims ruled, and I was just there. Years went by, and with each passing day, things only seemed to get worse. I tried, really tried, to carve out a life for myself outside the suffocating grip of my family dynamic. But no matter what I did, no matter how far I moved or how much I pushed away from my past, it was like there was an invisible tether constantly pulling me back to her, Allison. It was as if she was woven into the fabric of my life, and no matter how tightly I tried to stitch myself together, her influence always managed to sneak in. When I started dating Evan, I thought I'd finally found a way out. He was everything I'd ever wanted in someone. Kind, funny, down to earth. He saw me for who I truly was, not through the distorted lens of being compared to my sister. For the first time in years, I felt like someone genuinely cared for me, not for my family's expectations, but for my actual self. I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could build a life that didn't revolve around the constant chaos and manipulation. Evan didn't care about how perfect Allison was in everyone's eyes. He didn't care about her popularity, her beauty, or her constant spotlight. He didn't seem bothered by her at all, which was a refreshing change. But, of course, that wasn't enough for Allison. It never was. One afternoon, I had invited Evan over to my house. It was supposed to be a low-key visit, just him and me hanging out, enjoying each other's company. I had this idea in my head that maybe, just maybe, if I could create some distance from the drama of my family, I could live like a normal person. I could live my life, not their version of it. But as usual, my optimism didn't last long. The moment Evan walked through the front door, I could already sense it. Allison's game had begun. She greeted him with that fake sweetness that had always worked like magic on people. I'm sure she'd perfected it over the years using it to get whatever she wanted from anyone and everyone. She wasn't just being friendly, though. No, she was flirty. Her whole demeanor shifted into something else, something calculated. She wore this ridiculously skimpy outfit, something way too revealing for a simple hangout, and she knew it. She played with her hair, smiled that overly sugary smile, and dropped little comments about how much more fun she was than me. "You know, I always have the best time when I'm around Evan," she said, eyes twinkling with that mischievous spark. "I don't know how Emily puts up with all her drama. You really should come hang out with me more. I promise I'm way more fun than she could ever be." I could feel my blood begin to boil. The worst part? She knew exactly what she was doing. Allison had a way of playing people like puppets, and Evan, with his good heart, was no different. I saw the way he shifted uncomfortably, the way his smile faltered just slightly. But Allison didn't stop there. She continued her act, talking about her latest escapades, her popularity at school, the guys who always flocked to her, and how everyone loved her. I could see her eyes flicker toward me, like she was daring me to step in, to say something. But I knew better than to start a fight in front of Evan. That was exactly what she wanted. Evan, however, wasn't blind. He saw it too. He wasn't a fool, and he wasn't one of the people who fell for Allison's act. But seeing him realize it, seeing that familiar discomfort in his eyes, broke something inside of me. It was like I had been punched in the gut all over again. This feeling of not being enough, of being the invisible one while Allison thrived in the spotlight. After what seemed like an eternity, Evan stood up abruptly. I think I need to go," he said, his voice tight. I don't know if I'm feeling this. I didn't realize this was a thing." He turned to me, his face conflicted, and then he walked out, leaving me standing there in a sea of silence. The door slammed shut behind him, and I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. A million thoughts were racing through my head. How had it gone so wrong? How had she done it again? I knew she was manipulating the situation, but it still stung. Even more so because I had finally found someone who saw me, who didn't view me as the shadow of my perfect sister. Yet here I was, once again caught in the web she'd spun around me, trapped in a cycle that felt like it would never end. But the real kicker came when my parents walked into the room, having witnessed the fallout. And guess who they sided with? Guess who they believed without question? Allison. Of course. They'd always believed her. Even when the evidence was right in front of them, even when it was clear that she was the one who had manipulated Evan into leaving. They'd always brushed me off, telling me I was being dramatic, telling me I was too sensitive, that I was just paranoid. "You've been reading too many books, Emily," my dad said, running a hand through his hair. "You're overreacting. Allison just gets a little playful sometimes, and I don't think she meant any harm." I felt like I was drowning. This was the moment I realized something that had been festering inside me for years. I was never going to be seen as I truly was. I was always going to be the sidekick, the backdrop to Allison's life. And the worst part? My parents would never change. No matter how many times she hurt me, no matter how many times she manipulated the situation to her advantage, they would always find a way to justify her actions. This time it was different. I had spent my entire life playing by the rules. I had been the good daughter, the one who kept her head down, followed the rules, and tried to keep the peace. I avoided the drama, avoided confrontation, always tried to be the one everyone could rely on. But what had it gotten me? Years of being ignored, years of being the second choice, years of my own family telling me that I didn't matter. But Allison, she got away with everything. She could lie, manipulate, hurt people, and there were no consequences. She was their golden child. And in that moment, as I stood there, completely alone once again, something inside me snapped. For the first time in my life, I let myself feel all the anger, all the hurt, and all the betrayal. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I wasn't going to let Allison win. I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. I made a vow right then and there that I would never let Allison control my life again. It wasn't going to happen. Not this time. I was done being the silent one. I was done being the good daughter. From that moment on, I was going to be the one who called the shots. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to find a way to take back my life. I was going to take my power back. And this time, nothing and no one was going to stop me. Hey, are you finding the story interesting so far? If you are, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can continue the adventure together. The best part is just ahead. Time passed, and slowly but surely, I began piecing together ways to reclaim control of my life. I wasn't the same girl anymore, the timid, overlooked, constantly accommodating daughter I had been raised to be. I had found my voice, and I was determined to use it. Every ounce of hurt, every moment of humiliation, every time I'd been cast aside, fueled my determination. This was my life, and I was ready to finally live it on my own terms. But planning something bold and transformative wasn't easy. For weeks, I grappled with doubt and guilt. There were nights when I questioned myself, asking if stooping to their level of manipulation was justified. Did I really want revenge? Or did I simply want validation? But deep down, I knew that I deserved more than just validation. I deserved freedom. Freedom from their control. Freedom from the toxic cloud Allison and my parents had cast over every significant milestone in my life. My moment arrived sooner than expected. It happened when Jake, my best friend and the one man who had genuinely understood me, got down on one knee on a quiet Sunday morning at our favorite park. He held out a ring with a shy yet confident smile, and I felt my heart skip a beat. It was a simple proposal, sincere and intimate, the kind that represented everything our relationship stood for. And as I said yes, I saw clearly in his eyes that he knew exactly what marrying me meant. Not just accepting me, but also stepping into the stormy waters of my complicated family drama. We chose my hometown for the wedding. Strategically, it made sense. My family still lived there, and if I wanted to confront them once and for all, I knew it had to be done in a place where their reputation mattered, where their public image was everything to them. Choosing my hometown was a statement. It said clearly that I wasn't running away from them. I was coming home to claim what was mine. I sat down with Jake one evening, about 6 months before the wedding. At our kitchen table scattered with wedding magazines, invitation samples, and a mess of color swatches. I took a deep breath and said, "You know, they'll find a way to make it all about Allison again. Every celebration, every milestone, it's always been about her. She always manages to steal my spotlight. Not this time. This time, I'm ready for it." Jake nodded quietly, a smirk growing on his lips. "So let's beat them at their own game." His voice carried a mischievous edge, and I knew then that he wasn't just willing to go along with the plan. He was fully committed. That night, under the flickering kitchen light, we hatched our elaborate plan, brainstorming and laughing, feeling more connected than ever. It was us against the world, or at least us against my manipulative family, and for the first time I felt invincible. The first step was to let them think they were in control. I knew that would make them careless. A few weeks later, we drove down to my parents' house. Sitting in their pristine living room, decorated with framed photos of Allison's accomplishments, we played our parts perfectly. Allison's been feeling a bit overshadowed lately. My mother began cautiously, giving Jake a pointed look. "You know how sensitive she is about you getting married first." It took every bit of my self-control to keep a straight face. Sensitive was hardly the word I would have chosen. Spoiled, entitled, those words fit much better. Jake squeezed my hand subtly, reassuring me to stay calm. "Maybe we can find some way to make her feel included," my father added, leaning forward, as if this were a delicate negotiation. "It would mean a lot to her." Jake nodded, feigning careful consideration. "Absolutely. I totally understand where you're coming from. Maybe we can let Allison have a special role in the ceremony. Something really significant, like letting her go down the aisle first. Perhaps." My parents exchanged relieved glances, falling right into our trap. "Oh, that would be perfect," my mother exclaimed, visibly relaxing. "That way she gets her moment." I smiled warmly, playing my part. "Yes, that's fine. Allison can even wear a wedding dress if that would make her happy." They paused for a moment, unsure if I was sincere. Jake chimed in convincingly. "I think it's a great gesture, Emily. It'll show Allison how much you appreciate her." My parents looked ecstatic, completely oblivious to the irony. They thought they'd manipulated us perfectly, when in reality, every word had been carefully calculated. We spent the next several months carefully orchestrating the details, maintaining the illusion that we were bending to their will. Every now and then, Jake would pretend to slip up, accidentally mentioning something my parents would disapprove of, only to quickly backtrack, reinforcing their illusion of control. But behind the scenes, our real preparations took place. We hired discreet private security, professionals recommended by Jake's cousin, someone trustworthy and detached from family drama. The lead security guard, Marcus, was briefed privately about the unique situation, sworn to secrecy, and given explicit instructions. Under no circumstances was Allison to be allowed near the aisle. He understood completely, nodding with the solemn professionalism of someone accustomed to delicate situations. I met privately with a trusted group of my closest friends who had long been supportive of me, sharing enough of the story so they could help discreetly on the wedding day. My best friend, Sarah, immediately volunteered to create strategic distractions if necessary. "Trust me, Emily," she promised. "If Allison tries anything funny, I'll be there to handle it." The most unexpected and meaningful addition to our plan came from my Aunt Caroline. She had always been quietly supportive, observing the family's mistreatment of me from afar without knowing how best to help. When I confided in her, revealing a sliver of our scheme, her eyes sparkled with a mischievous determination I'd never seen before. "It's about time someone taught your parents a lesson," she said. "Count me in. I'll spread the word subtly, ensuring people are watching. They'll have nowhere to hide if they mess this up." Throughout the planning stages, though, the emotional toll was immense. There were days I felt anxious, second-guessing whether I was being petty or justified. Jake reassured me each time, reminding me of all the times they had hurt me, manipulated me, stolen joy from me without remorse. "You deserve to stand up for yourself," he would whisper, gently pulling me into his embrace. "We're doing the right thing." As the wedding drew near, I could sense the tension building within my family. Allison began behaving even more dramatically, making wild demands for attention, oblivious that we were subtly recording and documenting her behavior, just in case things escalated. My parents, blinded by their favoritism, continued to indulge her every whim, unaware they were playing perfectly into our hands. A week before the wedding, Jake and I drove back to my hometown one final time, walking through the venue to finalize the arrangements. As we stood in the empty aisle, I could almost visualize the plan unfolding. The shock on their faces, Allison's disbelief, the satisfaction I'd feel finally taking control of my story. Jake took my hand softly, sensing my thoughts. "You ready for this?" I took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. "I'm ready," I replied firmly. "For once, I'm not the one who's going to get played. I'm done being a pawn in their games." And as we stood there together, looking down that aisle, I knew that soon all the planning, all the secrecy, all the emotional struggle would be worth it. My family had always underestimated me, always believed they could control me. But this time I held all the cards. When the day came, the tables would finally turn, and I'd be the one calling the shots. I would have the last laugh, and for the first time in my life, I knew I deserved it. The wedding day finally arrived, and the air was thick with tension, like a thunderstorm just moments before the first clap of thunder. I woke up that morning with a strange mixture of excitement and nerves tangled in my chest, my heart thumping steadily against my ribs, as if reminding me of everything that lay ahead. This was more than just my wedding day. This was the day I reclaimed my life, my happiness, and my dignity from the shadow my family had cast over me for far too long. I carefully slipped into my wedding dress, feeling the smooth fabric fall softly around me like a protective shield. As my friend Sarah fastened the delicate clasp at the back, she whispered gently into my ear, "You've got this, Emily. Everything is going exactly according to plan." Her reassuring smile calmed the fluttering in my stomach, giving me one last surge of confidence. Jake stood waiting just outside, impeccably dressed and exuding a quiet strength that grounded me whenever I faltered. "You ready?" he asked softly, his eyes warm and full of unwavering support. He held out his arm, offering more than just physical support. He was my emotional anchor, the one person who had always seen me clearly. "I've never been more ready," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. We exchanged a knowing glance, a shared understanding passing silently between us. Today was ours. Today belonged only to us, no longer hijacked by my parents' manipulative schemes or overshadowed by Allison's petty jealousy. We stepped toward the doors leading to the aisle, the sounds of soft music and muffled chatter growing louder with each careful step. My heart raced as I saw the faces of our guests turn to look, their smiles brightening as they spotted me. Then I saw my parents, sitting near the front, dressed impeccably as always. Their faces wore matching smug expressions. It was clear they believed they'd outmaneuvered me once again, fully expecting Allison's dramatic entrance at any moment. My father glanced eagerly toward the doors behind me, waiting for his favorite daughter, oblivious to the fact that the tables had quietly turned. As Jake guided me down the aisle, I saw the first flicker of confusion cross my father's face. Allison wasn't entering. The music swelled gently, beautifully out of sync with their expectations. I kept my eyes locked ahead, pretending ignorance as whispers began spreading through the crowd. My father leaned slightly, trying in vain to see behind us, anxiety creeping into his carefully composed demeanor. Just then, the muffled sound of voices and knocking resonated through the closed doors at the back of the venue. Allison's voice, shrill and panicked, pierced through the elegant ceremony music. "Dad! Mom! Let me in! They won't let me through!" Allison screamed, each syllable dripping with desperation. The security guards we'd strategically placed remained immovable. My father jumped up frantically, his chair scraping loudly against the polished wooden floor. His face drained of color as he rushed toward the security, demanding explanations. "What's going on here? That's my daughter out there." "I'm sorry, sir." The security guard replied calmly yet firmly, his voice authoritative and professional. "We've been given strict instructions. No exceptions." My mother, stunned into temporary silence, quickly followed my father, her perfectly manicured hands shaking visibly as she tried to reason with the guard. "You don't understand. We had an arrangement. This must be a mistake." Meanwhile, inside, the whispers intensified into louder murmurs. I saw familiar faces twisted in confusion and disbelief. Sarah, perfectly poised and ready for her cue, stood up from her seat, dramatically looking around and then calling out in a tone filled with genuine-sounding concern. "Wait! What's happening? Where's Allison? Wasn't she supposed to walk first?" Perfect. It was exactly the prompt I'd prepared for. Feigning shock and confusion, I let a single tear roll down my cheek. My voice trembled convincingly as I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. I don't know," they said. "They said it shouldn't be me here today." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Heads turned in unison toward my now visibly distressed parents. Eyes widened, expressions hardened. Judgment was swift and silent yet unmistakably clear. My parents' meticulously crafted facade was crumbling rapidly. Outside, the chaos escalated. Allison's screams grew more desperate. Her perfectly planned moment, her carefully chosen dress, her entire charade. All of it had collapsed in an instant. She was banging fiercely on the door, the sound echoing like a symphony of poetic justice. Each knock another crack in my family's carefully maintained image. "Please, let me in. This is supposed to be my moment," Allison shouted hysterically, her voice breaking between sobs. The guests nearest the entrance clearly overheard every word, their faces filled with disgust and disbelief. Jake, sensing the drama had reached its peak, gently squeezed my hand, guiding me forward again, signaling to continue walking down the aisle. I moved forward confidently, no longer feeling the weight of my past but a profound sense of liberation. One older relative, my Aunt Caroline, who'd always silently understood my struggles, stood up, her voice unexpectedly authoritative. "I've had enough of this nonsense," she declared, turning toward my parents. How dare you ruin Emily's wedding with such ridiculous drama? She deserves this day, more than any of us can imagine. More voices joined in support, the tide of opinion shifting visibly. Friends and family alike murmured agreements, condemning my parents' favoritism and Allison's constant attention-seeking antics. Standing at the altar, hand firmly clasped in Jake's, I watched the unfolding scene with an unprecedented feeling of peace. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix things or smooth things over. I was at the heart of the storm, yet entirely untouched by its fury. My parents' carefully controlled world had imploded spectacularly, and Allison, the golden child, was suddenly an outcast, exposed for the selfish, manipulative person she'd always been. Eventually, defeated, my parents sank back into their seats, their faces ashen with shock and humiliation. Allison, still outside, finally fell quiet, perhaps realizing at last that she had lost, utterly and completely. As the whispers quieted, Jake and I stood facing each other, sharing an intimate look of victory and profound love. The officiant cleared his throat discreetly, breaking the final traces of tension that lingered in the air. "Shall we begin?" he asked kindly, a gentle smile on his face. I nodded, taking a deep breath and feeling lighter than ever before. "Yes, let's." As we exchanged vows, each word felt stronger, deeper, and more powerful because they were spoken freely, without manipulation, without the shadow of someone else looming over me. They were my words, my choices, spoken boldly and without hesitation. When we turned to face our friends and family as husband and wife, applause erupted spontaneously, genuine, enthusiastic, heartfelt. I knew the cheers weren't just for the wedding, but for my victory, for finally standing up and reclaiming what had always rightfully been mine. And the sweetest revenge of all wasn't the chaos I'd orchestrated or the humiliation of my family. It was the feeling of absolute freedom as I walked down the aisle, hand in hand with Jake, no longer bound by my family's toxic hold. I had broken free. At long last, my life was my own. So, what do you think about the way things turned out? Do you feel that justice was finally served? Or do you think I went too far? I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections. Drop your comments down below. If you enjoyed my story, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. More intriguing stories are coming your way, each filled with unexpected twists and deep truths about family, love, and finding your own path. Thanks so much for sticking with me to the very end. I truly appreciate your support. Until next time.